Russia, 1919. A civil war rages between the revolutionary Bolsheviks and the anti-communist White Armies. On the banks of the Great Volga River, the town of Tsaritsyn stands as one of Russia's most important industrial centers and the gateway to central Russia. Having laid siege to Tsaritsyn on 3 previous occasions, the White Army, now aided by British tanks and planes, finally succeeded in capturing the town. These counter-revolutionaries, mostly Cossacks and old imperial forces, hoped to use this victory to secure southern Russia and ultimately launch an assault on Moscow, the seat of Bolshevik power. However, the Red Army, with its radical but popular ideologies, still controlled the central regions. This meant that most of the country's oil and grain were under Bolshevik control.
После высадки из поезда наш полк выстроили у берега Волги. Волга, матушка. В ее неторопливых водах отражается душа всей России.
Мы народное ополчение, новая российская армия. Наш долг – бороться с империалистами и угнетателями. Товарищ Сталин описал прежние бои за город. 3 года здесь лилась русская кровь. Взять Царицын – наш долг перед павшими товарищами.
Okay everybody, before we begin, just allow me to say a few things. You all have read the title and probably have thought to yourself, what the hell is this? I thought this was a gaming channel. It is, which is why there is Battlefield 1 footage in the background. This is something that I felt needed to be talked about. It is the 100th year anniversary of the October Revolution in Russia after all, and it's a pinnacle of what basically laid out the past 70 years of history for Russia and other Eastern Bloc countries. As a result, therefore, I really thought that this needed to be talked about. Now, this video is not supposed to take a political argument on either side of this battle or conflict, and is not supposed to glorify either side of the conflict either. This is purely for an educative nature, and like I said, the reason that there's Battlefield 1 footage in the background is twofold. First, as some of you may or may not know, I run my YouTube channel off of my PlayStation, which means I don't have the ability to record off of sources found on the internet or stick clips in that I've downloaded from the internet, because the PS4 won't allow you to do such a thing, meaning I'm rather limited as to what footage I have playing in the background. I'm hoping that this footage playing in the background is somewhat resemblance of the story that I'm actually going to be talking about and the history behind it. So, let's begin. First off, allow me to stress that this video is meant to be that of an educative nature. This video is not meant to glorify either side of the argument, as I've already mentioned. So, during the late 1800s and early 1900s, Russia was ruled by the Tsars, the Russian monarchy. An interesting piece of trivia is the Tsar, King Nicholas II, if you look at him and then look at King George V, who at the time, during the First World War, was ruling over England, they look almost like twins, but they are in fact cousins. They're related. This led to Russia becoming a police state. The system benefited those placed higher on the class ladder, with the workers right at the bottom. During World War I, the stress placed on the working class strained, and at the time, the price of simple commodities such as bread increased drastically, all while men and women alike were dying on the battlefields on the Eastern Front. In October of 1917, the straw finally collapsed the camel's back. This was the start of the Bolshevik Revolution that would shake Russia to its very core and lay out history for the next 70 years. It started in Petrograd, now known as St. Petersburg, where the Bolsheviks rose up again over the ruling class and began to fight back. After years of fighting, they captured Moscow, but members of the former government, who had formed the White Russian Army, tried to repel the attacks and take back control of the country that they thought was rightfully theirs. This led to the Bolshevik army, known as now the Red Army, fighting the White Army for the heart of the country. Battlefield 1 does an impressive job of bringing this to light upon the year of the 100th anniversary, which is the operation mode that I'm currently playing. This is the second map amongst the two that are available. I took the time to actually unlock the Mosin Nagant just to make it seem a little bit more believable. So, as I said, this is going to seem a little bit strange for me, this video. It's not something I normally do. Chances are it's probably going to go into a playlist for history. You know, topics on the consideration that I can use gameplay footage from the games that I do play and upload footage of in the background. Meaning that I'm hoping to pander to both the historical audiences and the gaming audiences, whether they be subscribed to my channel already or not. This is a piece of Russia's past that, as I said, shaped and moulded the country to what it would become for the next 70 years. The Bolsheviks under Vladimir Lenin felt that the country was in a dire need of reparation as a result of World War I and the events that took place beforehand. I mentioned that the Russian monarchy was running the country in a police state. Anybody who protested was usually shot upon, and Tsar Nicholas's idea of crowd control was, well, not so much from a political standpoint, it was more or less bring up the machine guns and let the army deal with it. Of course, this only worked right up until the point the Bolsheviks managed to get the attention of those who were in the army, and former officers of the Russian Imperial Army were siding with the Bolsheviks and the Red Army. This meant, excuse me, this meant that we ended up with not only white Russians fighting one another and fighting the Bolsheviks, but we ended up with the sides blurring into one another. Those who had formerly served the Russian Empire were now fighting for the Bolsheviks and everything in between. It's worth noting that the Bolshevik Red Army was pretty much made up of peasants who had managed to get a hold of weapons one way or another, whereas the White Army consisted of former Russian Imperial Army officers and enlisted men, or conscripts. Both of these sides fought their absolute best in order to win back the heart of the country, although the end result was the Bolshevik Revolution seized power over the entire Russian nation and soon started to rebuild. Prior to the Bolsheviks taking over the country, a piece of bread, which had been reasonably cheap before the war, had begun to rise in price drastically as a result of shortages. I mentioned that the Russian Empire was ran on more or less a feudalist method, meaning that the king was at the top, anybody who was close to the king was below that, and then the working class were right at the bottom, getting shit on by everybody above them. This is not a political statement, this is more or less true. This can be seen in previous historical standpoints as well, such as the British Empire, during the time when the kings and the queens were more or less running the country in a feudal manner. Although there was a government in Russia, aside from the king had the overruling choice of what did happen and what didn't happen. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it was something a little bit unusual. And for those of you who are more history buffs on this situation, it's probably going to turn you the wrong way, but allow me to just say this. I'm not a historian, as much as I wish I was. It was at one point my dream job, and yet here I am, making videos on YouTube. Nevertheless, this wasn't so much an overall overview of the entire conflict and the Russian Revolution and everything that happened in between. This is more or less a starting point for those people who don't know anything about it, the people who play this game, play this mode and don't have a single clue what it resembles. I'm grateful that I at least know that much. This video is supposed to entice people into picking up their phone, going on the internet, using the computer and looking into this in more detail. We have a world of knowledge at our fingertips, something that 20 years ago was not a thing, so let's use it and let's educate ourselves. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you're not subscribed, then the subscribe button is right down below. If you liked the video, please hit the like button. If you didn't, then the dislike button is right next door. I'll see you guys on the next video, and I hope you have a good day.